Fantasy. Mick is with me again tonight. How are you this evening, Mick?
I'm always well, mate. I'm always well.
Always well. Are you well because your multi from last episode came off? Is that why you're so
Oh,
well? Or would you be
absolutely.
literally jumping up and down more if that was the case?
I think I'd be lying on the ground in shock more so, to be honest.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't even think we need to break the ice there. Everyone just assumes it hasn't got up by now, and they'd be right.
I think
I
if
mean,
it did, I wouldn't even do the intro. I'd probably just like be yelling about the fact
you,
the multi came out.
you know what? I reckon the day that happens, I do the intro.
There you go.
Let's make
That
it.
for the 4 people that listen, that'll be a real buzz.
Except for the people that miss this episode, and they're going to be like,
What's going
that's not
on?
Isaac. What's happening here?
This makes no sense. What's happening? Oh well. Well, for those people who are listening, if that ever happens and you hear Mick start us off, you know what has happened. That'll be a fun surprise for Jeff, and
just,
whomever
just
else.
Jeff.
just Jeff, who was hoping to be on tonight, to be honest, on the podcast, on the live stream, but unfortunately, some technical issues have prevented him from doing that this evening, which is a bit of a shame because it would have been good to have him on. We definitely need someone to take up the slack that Gilby and Dave have so kindly given us. So we'll have to wait and see. Maybe next week will be the week we can get Jeff on for some probably better expert analysis than what we can even provide, given he is a referee and can
Well,
knows what's actually going on in football.
yeah, I feel like now that we know that he's keen, he'll get on at some point. Maybe we just have to go through and pick out all of the big skeptical decisions of the round. Maybe we have to look at it and try and take note of any VAR controversy or any goals that were disallowed or allowed that shouldn't have been, and get his
Yeah,
take on them all. So maybe it's a good thing, a blessing in disguise. We can prepare ourselves for that and even look at some of the big decisions of this season that are going to impact. Because I know you
yeah,
can look at a couple of seasons ago, there was a couple of handballs where Everton, I think, were disallowed one against City, which could have cost City in the end, and against Liverpool. So I don't know. There's a few that we could look at, I think, but we'll just have to wait and see what happens when that comes around.
yeah. And I think, I mean, even if he was on tonight, we weren't prepared with that. We still could have had a bit of a chat about Liverpool because things aren't going well there by the looks of it. And Jeff, massive Liverpool fan, loves Liverpool, wants them to win, has had a great last few years in terms of seeing Liverpool do well, but they're really not going well at all at the moment.
No, but they did. They got second. They tied for their group in the Champions League this morning, so they have got out of the group. They're into the knockout portion.
Yeah,
Tottenham did the same. That was an interesting group. I don't know if you're watching that this morning or at least following the scores, but at one point Tottenham was third, and then they were second, and they ended up topping the group. And Sporting, I think, missed out, and Frankfurt ended up topping the group. So really close group. That one could have gone any
yeah.
way. And the other thing, keep going in the Champions League, is Rangers are now statistically the worst ever Champions League team. 6 losses from 6 games, 2 goals scored, 22 goals conceded.
Ooh, not the
So
record you want.
no, and when you consider that, I mean, we say that from an Aussie perspective, that Ange is, I think he's got 2 points so far. They play again tomorrow morning in their
Yeah,
final game. They won't make it out. I don't think they can even come third in their group.
no.
Um, the fact that he's taken it to some of the big teams, and I'm pretty sure I saw it was one of the teams he's played against. I think it might have been Vinicius Junior came out and said that Celtic's record doesn't match how they play. He's like he would have expected them to have got more results than they have. Just
Yeah,
because they're there on 2 points doesn't mean they're necessarily a team that you can just expect to take 3 points from. And I'm sure there's a little bit of gamesmanship there, trying to underplay it. And I mean, Real Madrid should be rightly pretty confident there, but I think it's an interesting one that he did come out and say that, and even commented that they're a lot better when Rangers, who was meant to be their competition, apparently aren't even competitive.
yeah. Well, I mean, you got to assume that they'll be better for the experience if they do make it next year, and they're obviously on track to do that at the moment. And I think that would be Ange's approach realistically. So he when he was in Australia recently, he did a podcast with Howie, I don't know
Yep.
if you've heard of the Howie Games. So if
Yep.
you haven't listened to that, it's actually a really good listen. He's actually been on the podcast twice now. So there's two
Yep.
podcasts with Ange Postecoglou on the Howie Games. Well worth a listen. And he sort of, it really sets the scene about how he got to where he got to. And, I think he'll just be happy that he's had that experience now and he can then start planning for the next year realistically. When
Yeah,
you think
absolutely.
about budgets and how much money he's actually got to work with compared to most other teams in that competition, if he can actually ever make it out of the group stage realistically, that's huge, massive.
Absolutely. And from an Aussie perspective, Aaron Moy looks like he's getting a pretty consistent start there now. Seems to be playing pretty well in that centre midfield. And I think the last thing in the Aussie watch and the non-Premier League watch is Rogic update.
Let's
West
do it.
Brom. West Brom has a new manager. Is actually
Congratulations.
Huddersfield's manager from last year, so a Spanish dude, Carlos Carbion, something
So a
like
bit
that.
of a recycle? Is that what we're going
Well,
with?
he did really well for them. He left, went to Olympiacos in Greece. Pretty sure he
Oh,
signed in
bad
July and
move.
he left in October. So
Yeah.
didn't last long.
Mm,
And now he's with us. So he did well for Huddersfield, got them from mid to low championship to, I think they made the playoff final and lost to Bournemouth, Fulham, or who else went up? Nottingham Forest. Must be Nottingham
yeah.
Forest. They lost to. So he's done pretty well there. See how it goes. But Rogic, watch, came off the bench, played 14 minutes, got an assist, so 4 points. It is
Nice.
I don't even know if you can call it an assist. He was
Uh,
standing in the goal mouth after a corner and he realized the ball and tried to move out of the way. It hit him and fell to a different player. So technically 4 points, but hey, you take them however you can get them.
hey, it's a
But yeah, it's not
stat.
great. It is a
It's a
stat.
stat.
It's a stat.
So, like I say, it better than any stat we've got in the championship, to be fair. So good for him. Thank you for Rogic Watch. It's always a fun little segment. And I just want to close this bit off by just recapping. Liverpool, they're in ninth position at the moment, so 16 points. Man City 29 points. Arsenal 31 points. They're just in front of Crystal Palace on goal difference only. Both have a game in hand. So do the leaders. Realistically, Mick, do you think Liverpool can get anywhere close to top? I'm going to say to top 3 or top 2.
To top 3.
Like
And how
I
many
think
points
that
did you say they're behind?
they're on 16 points. Tottenham, who are in the third place at the moment, are on 26, so they're 10 points behind third. And that obviously makes 12 points behind.
You've got to
Or
assume
11 points, I should say, behind. Yeah.
you've got to assume towards the back end of the season they're going to not necessarily come good, but lose less frequently. I don't think they'd expect to have won 4, drawn 4, lost 4 at this point of the season. I think they've still got 7 games left in the first half of the first half of the season. So, I mean, what they get last year? 90 points or something. So I
Yeah.
think you could probably back them in for another 45, which is at least from that back half of the season. Maybe a little bit more than that with those extra 7 games. Probably give them 55 points from here, gets them to 70. Now, I don't know exactly off the top of my head, but what was last year? Let's see if I can find it. I was just saying, I think 55 points from here out in what have they got, 26 games left? I think 55 points is relatively achievable. They've got 16 already. That gets them to 70 points. Now, 70 points last year, they only ended up with 69.
Sure. Okay.
So, and they came third.
Yeah.
That's 2020, 2021. So that's a couple of seasons ago. Last year, they ended up with 92.
Yeah.
70 still would have made them top 4.
Yeah.
I do think that, I mean, what is there? There's 3 games left until the break.
Yeah.
Assuming there's no significant injuries, which a team like Liverpool, they're going to have a pretty large representation at World Cup.
Yep.
That you'd expect, okay, they might get some kind of niggle from it. They won't have the rest that, say, Haaland's going to get. But I still think they can get to 70 points pretty comfortably. So I think top 4 is still in question. But no, they're not going to get anywhere near challenging for first. And I guess you could argue Arsenal's that far ahead. I don't know if they're really going to come back to Arsenal either. So they've really got to hope, because I mean, if you look at Chelsea and Man U, either of
Yeah, we're
them,
talking 15 points. So
are
yeah,
they looking are they looking better than Chelsea or Man U? Probably not really. I mean, they're not looking much worse though. Tottenham's the one that's kind of in between. At their best, they look great, but at their worst, all four of those teams
yeah,
are ordinary. And then you've got Newcastle, who could very comfortably sneak into that top four the way it's going.
yeah, absolutely.
So, I mean, you got Fulham and Brighton in there as well, but I think that will drop off a little bit. I think you're going to end
Yeah,
up there, but Newcastle, unlike
they've been
Brighton,
impressive.
I can't see them dropping out. Across the last calendar year, they're fourth.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
they're going to be there. If Liverpool, Man U, and Chelsea and Tottenham start taking points off each other, then it's going to be an Arsenal, Man City 1-2, and Newcastle could well sneak third or fourth here.
yeah. I think it's going to be really interesting. Like it's just there's a couple of interesting things. First one being it's interesting that like if Liverpool aren't the ones challenging City, at least there is somebody else there who is at the moment, which being Arsenal. It'd be interesting to see what happens when they play each other. And then that fight for the other European spots. You know, previous years that it always seems like, oh yeah, the normal ones who would expect, like, or Man United have been terrible. They haven't really been in the reckoning, so they haven't really challenged for those spots. Whereas this year, you've legitimately got sort of 4-5 really good teams who realistically can and should and will challenge. So I think that makes it just even that little bit more exciting. Plus, you've got the possibility, if you go down the very bottom of the table, where like established teams like Leicester and Southampton and Wolves to an extent could possibly get relegated. But I mean, we're sort of a long way from that. I get that, but that's where it's sitting. So it's interesting to see.
Yeah, and I'm looking at it now, and man, Newcastle's more impressive than even I thought they were. They've only lost one game out of
Yeah,
13. So they've played
that is
one game
impressive.
more than Arsenal and City. They've conceded one goal less and lost the same number. So they just don't score as freely, which if
Yeah,
you look at Callum Wilson at the moment, you'd argue opposite. But
yeah,
I think from memory, the game they lost as well was a upset. I think they lost to who did they lose to? They lost. No, it was to Liverpool. I'm wrong. I thought maybe it was a draw. They should have won. Bournemouth was 1-1, so
mm,
that's the one I was thinking of. So
yeah. Okay.
it's 6 draws, 6 wins, and a loss. That's damn impressive.
Mm-hmm. And look, selfish point of view, like I see potential for Crystal Palace to sneak into the top 10, which they haven't done before. That'd be really, really cool to see. They're doing well. They've got a good team. So I think
I mean,
there's a
yeah,
chance.
they're equal Liverpool at the moment. But
Yeah.
I guess the easiest way to do that is you look at the teams below Palace.
Yep.
Brentford, possibly, but I mean, I would back Palace to break into the top 10 before Brentford.
Yeah.
Everton, I think the one you got to worry about is West Ham. If West Ham
Yeah.
can turn their form
Yeah.
around, they're the ones that are going to rise up pretty quickly. I
Yeah.
think
That's
Leicester
right.
and Wolves are too far away right now. Leeds, Villa, and Southampton just aren't convincing enough and consistent enough. So I think, man, Palace has. I would be very surprised if you guys aren't safe with 5, 6 games left to go in the season, if not more.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, what, 40 points to be safe realistically? I think even 36 points generally you're safe, but 40 definitely. So yeah, I'd hope that would be the case. I'd hope that before, with 3 games left, and a game up our sleeve potentially. I don't know when they're going to be playing that extra one, but I'd hope that yeah we're over 20 points and looking really good. That'd be a really good outcome because that means you've got some good momentum going into that second part of the season. So